In this series, we'll be going through various characters of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters series, and specifically, which of their cards we'd like to be supported in the real-life card game. While we don't have an official scoring system, some of the things we'll be looking at is how much people love the card, the impact it had in the anime, and how much existing support it already has in the current card game. Today's list will cover the lead character of the show, Yugi Muto, and that includes his counterpart, the Pharaoh, as well. Yugi's deck throughout the series is packed with an assortment of cards that always somehow manage to work as a cohesive deck. While a lot of that is plot armor, or as he likes to call it, heart of the cards, that doesn't change the fact that this variety has led Yugi to wielding many memorable cards, many of which have received support to varying degrees from Dark Magician to Curse of Dragon. So this list, more than any others we plan to do, required making some tough choices on what cards to include and what cards to exclude, but here's where we landed.
Number 10.
Marshmelon is a light fairy monster with only 300 attack and 500 defense, but as is often the case with Yugi, he manages to make the most out of even his weakest cards. Marshmelon has the awesome effect where it can't be destroyed by battle, and if it was attacked face down, inflicts 1000 damage to the opponent. Yugi pairs his card with Marshmelon glasses so that it can absorb all attacks, but the support stops there. Needless to say, Konami has a tendency to exploit cute cards for marketing or into full-blown archetypes, so it's interesting that they haven't done so for this one yet. An archetype centered around Marshmelon may leverage the concept of indestructibility, paired with dishing out effect damage when the opponent tries to target or destroy the marshmallows.
Number 9.
Gazelle, the king of mythical beasts. Honestly, not a huge fan of this card, but Yugi seemed to use it in every duel in Battle City onward along the likes of that brick Baphomet, so we can't deny its significance. What also helps is the fact that Konami has reimagined it to some extent, creating new support backed by the latest type to be introduced to the game, Illusion Monsters. The concept still has a long way to go before being a viable deck, but building on the illusion aspect where monsters can't be destroyed by battle or destroyed by battle is pretty cool. We'd also like to see this archetype in particular go in the Beast Fiend direction, which sounds like a pretty sweet hybrid.
Number 8.
Of the three lead spellcasters, Dark Magician Girl, and Magician of Black Chaos, it is the latter who gets the short end of the stick, despite having the longest scepter of the bunch. Bad puns aside, Magician of Black Chaos is a 2800 attack, 2600 defense, level 8 dark spellcaster who is most famous for being the card that deals the final blow to Pegasus. But in real life, he has the uphill battle of being a ritual monster. And while his retrained Dark Magician of Chaos has had his time at the top, both of them could use some fine-tuning to make them relevant. There are a couple of cards out there that try to bring these level 8s into the fold of the Dark Magician deck, but the Dark Magician archetype is typically better off without his big brother. So in our estimation, he should get his own archetype that can be centered around bringing out him and his retrain with more ease. The archetype could build on Chaos Scepter Blast, a card that allows you to banish a card face down if you have a level 8 or higher spellcaster, by making an archetype out of cards that get the Chaos Magicians onto the field, then start banishing your opponent's cards.
Number 7.
The three Musketeers of Face cards are a series of monsters that include Queen's Knight, King's Knight, and Jack's Knight. While the three Confusion summon into Arcana Knight Joker, Yugi typically uses these three as a means to tribute summon an Egyptian god card. Konami has since fleshed out the archetype a bit by giving some support cards as well as an additional monster in the form of Joker's Knight, but we think this is just the start of an interesting archetype. Continuing to play to the idea of a royal court and or a deck of playing cards could lead to some interesting possibilities, such that the three knights can stand on their own. But if not, they could always be brought into the fold of the next card we'd like to see further supported, and that is...
Number 6.
Slifer the Sky Dragon. Slifer is the god card that Yugi is most known for, probably because it is the first one he attains. Nevertheless, Slifer, like the other god cards, has never reached his anime prowess, being heavily restricted either because Konami didn't want to create unbeatable cards, and or because there isn't enough room on a card to fit all their text. Either way, Slifer and the entire Divine Beast archetype has only seen minimal support throughout the years, and despite getting its own structure deck, it still ways away from being competitively viable.
Number 5.
Gandora, the Dragon of Destruction. Gandora is the second of our Yugi-specific cards, by which I mean ones that little Yugi uses without the Pharaoh. Gandora is a level 8 Dark Dragon with 0 attack, but it gains its attack with its effect where you can pay half your life points to destroy as many other cards on the field, then give it 300 attack for each card destroyed. But then it sends itself to the graveyard the turn it was summoned. Gandora is considered one of Little Yugi's ace monsters, but even so has only received a couple of retrains and nothing else. While Gandora's effect is a watered down version of some other field destroying effects out there, it still could be a viable archetype centered around the 0 attack Gandoras that can nuke the field, then gain attack having met a specific condition.
Number 4.
Silent Swordsman and Silent Magician. We're grouping these together because not only do they both have the Silent moniker, they both share similar concepts as well. The original variants are both part of this level concept that Konami seems to have long forgotten about, and this is accentuated by the fact that they retrained each of them into standard versions who share similar effects of being able to negate a spell once per turn. Silent Swordsman has even received an additional support card called Silent Sword Slash. Silent Magician and Silent Swordsman both make their mark against Bakura and the Pharaoh in Little Yugi's 2 solo duels of the final season, with Silent Magician holding the distinct honor of serving the final blow of the final duel of the series. With spells typically a relevant part of the meta, building on this archetype to produce ever-strengthening monsters who can shut down a third of the card pool seems like a worthwhile archetype.
Number 3.
Kuribo. Can we stop messing around here? I mean, it's cute that Konami likes to give Kuribo new forms for every anime and forms that align with other archetypes, like Junkaribo and Magikaribo, but these forms hardly work well with each other. Let's embrace this furball with open arms and give him his own archetype once and for all. Kuribo is a level 3 Dark Fiend with the puny stats of 300 attack and 200 defense, which thus garners a lot of laughs from Yugi's opponents, but Kuribo never manages to disappoint, being able to take down the likes of Thousand Eyes Restrict and stall against Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. The anime does showcase a few different combos with Kuribo, such as Multiply and the Kuribo Brothers, and Konami has since released all of this, but there's still quite a bit of work to go to make this a viable deck. We'd like to see some cards that help bridge the various forms together and leverage the idea of an infinite amount of Kuribos, nickel and diming the opponent into submission.
Number 2.
Celtic Guardian. Aside from the retrains of Noxious Celtic Guard and Celtic Guard of Noble Arms, Celtic Guardian has not received any support, and that's pretty odd considering Yugi regularly uses this card and Konami has even acknowledged its importance through 2 alternate artworks. The OG is a 1400 attack vanilla, and its first retrain has since been power crept 2, but the Noble Arms variant gives us the idea of an archetype revolving around an army of Celtic Guards who gain more powerful effects the more soldiers you have in your army. So in the case of Noble Arms, the more Celtic Guards you have, the more cards you draw, and so on.
Honorable mention.
As we mentioned, Yugi has a lot of different cards he uses, and Konami has actually supported quite a few of them. Not on this list up to this point include the likes of Curse of Dragon, Gaia the Fierce Knight, and the Magnet Warriors, but our honorable mentions go to 2 cards that have archetypes that we think are just a few cards short of being competitively viable. Those are Buster Blader and Blackluster Soldier. These are 2 signature cards of Yugi's, the former of which is an all-in-one answer to his rival's Blue Eyes, while also being able to fuse with his ace card Dark Magician to form Dark Paladin. The latter is used to not combat his rival, but work alongside him, fusing with Kaiba's Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon to create Dragon Master Knight. While neither of their archetypes focus around those fusion monsters, the direction Konami has taken each of these is an interesting one, and we'd like to see Konami finish up their supporting of them.
Number 1.
But not more than we'd love to see support of the number 1 card on our list, and that is Summon Skull. It is nothing short of baffling that Summon Skull does not have his own archetype. Perhaps it's because he belongs to the greater Archfiend archetype, but this card has a storied legacy both in the anime and in the card game, being so long the best 1 tribute monster coming in at 2500 attack, and being used by Yugi in seemingly every duel in the early parts of the series, then reprising his glory in the ceremonial duel against the Pharaoh. Summon Skull has received some retrains in the form of a fusion, ritual, synchro, and Xyz monster, but none of these work well enough together to create a deck around. We'd like to see an archetype for one of the best monsters Yugi's deck has to offer. So that's our list of the top 10 Yugi cards we'd like to see star in their own deck. Given his catalog of monsters, we emphasize the ones that don't have a lot of existing support to begin with. Oh, and if you're wondering where Exodia is on our list, we actually prefer to put Exodia under Grandpa Moto instead of Yugi, so you'll catch him on a list later in the future. But as for Yugi's cards, let us know which you'd like to see to get their own deck, what you'd change, or if we missed a card completely that should be on the list. And be sure to like and subscribe as we reveal our top 10 Joey character cards we'd like to see supported, coming up next week.